So this Northernlion guy, if you haven't heard of him before in the FGC, you've definitely heard of him now. He's kind of been running the show as he's been picking up 2XKO, one of the biggest streamers on the planet. And it's all fun and games when your comfort streamer is punching down on something that you want to laugh at, right? You know, this clip, I've shown it off a couple times already.
Nen Impact? Is Nen Impact a move? Or is Nen Impact a fighting game that you deem superior, but it has like 8 players? Hold? The latter, okay. I mean, this isn't my first day on this website, so you gotta know that I know what you're doing.
Somehow prophetic with that intuition to call out Nen Impact. He was 100% correct, and everybody laughed when he went to make fun of poor little Nen Impact by speaking the truth. However, he has single-handedly revived the most circular discourse that I've ever seen in the fighting game community, and it's not so fun when he starts having the takes that call you out specifically, is it? The FGC might have turned on this egg streamer here with this one.
MH forward H. What the f does that mean? What is this? What is 6H? What the hell is 6H? Think of a number pad? How about you think of the light of the Lord and bask in it and then talk like a normal person? 1 is up, go counterclockwise. I'm gonna keep making fun of you. I'm sorry. I know that like what you're saying makes sense in the community that you're in, but this is not that community. So now you're just talking like a crazy person. So someone has to make fun of you. Someone has to make fun of you a little bit. That's insane. We're not like we're talking like normal people here for the most part, except when we do like gay Bob Dylan. Assists will help you jump in safely more. Is it the entire fighting game community is following the Socratic method, or is it like was there a annual general meeting where they decided to talk in such a way that you derive the conclusion yourself instead of giving you actionable feedback? The way I'm gonna translate your text. Your text was, assists will make your jump in more consistent. My translation, I'm gonna lint it. As I jump, press X. As I jump, press X. It sounds cleaner. I need you to go Sean Parker mode on me.
Everyone is having a grand old time with this guy playing 2XKO and talking about fighting games and partaking in the community, but this is the one that got people to turn on him, and somebody was freaking lying to him, man. Like, why was 1 up in the middle of that rant? Out of the thousands and thousands of chatters that are flying by on, he has like tens of thousands of viewers, he picked out the one that said 1 is up on top of that. But if you don't know what's going on at all, if you're lost here, people are trying to convert NL and do the worst thing possible, which is trying to coach from and backseat from Twitch chat. So he's encountered 2 of the worst things that the fighting game community has to offer. One is Numpad notation. This is one of the scariest things, one of the most off-putting things to a new fighting game player possible. And to be fair, I would also throw in any notation. It's some of the most intimidating and off-putting things that the FGC has ever produced to a brand new fighting game player. And then the number one most intimidating thing and off-putting thing to a brand new fighting game player is Twitch chat backseat coaching. That is the number one worst thing about being a streamer picking up a fighting game. Horrible position to be in. But this is Numpad notation, which if you're watching this video, you probably might know, but for a lot of people who watch my stuff, they might be Street Fighter heads and not understand Numpad notation. The idea being you're supposed to assign these numbers to directions which are derived from the numpad on your keyboard. You still have a full-size keyboard, right? You obviously have a numpad on the right side of your keyboard to glance at in the middle of your games to remember what a fucking 2, 3, 6 is. So it's meant to be a internationalized, standardized way to do notation for inputs, and it has a lot of benefits because it crosses language barriers. And it was often done or really popular in anime gaming communities for a long time, which, were primarily based in Japan. Like the majority of the audience and player base was in Japan. So how would players in America actually be able to share tech and communicate across these language barriers? So it has a lot of really good uses, and it also helps to remove ambiguity. I think Numpad notation is actually great for transcribing combos, but it does have a level of intimidation to a brand new player when they're first trying to pick up fighting games. You're not really speaking in traditional gamer lingo when you're trying to describe to someone to 6H. That's jargon that they're not going to understand if they come from different genres of games and are not versed in the fighting game community. And this take got a lot of heat. Like, some people were understanding, but a lot of people, this was a common response to NL here. The meme here, you're grown-ass man, they hand him the card for the Numpad notation. Quit complaining, shut up, and learn the Numpad notation. Welcome to the FGC, bitch. These aren't video games, this is a way of life. And study on the past 30 years of FGC history, jargon, lingo, techniques to be able to play our games. A lot of people are getting pissed about this take from NL. A lot of people. But some people were leaning in the other direction. I hate to accidentally surprise grok you guys, but this was translated here from York. I thought it was just a funny example they brought up. Numerical notation helps a lot to get everyone on the same page across platforms and setups, but obviously it sounds super weird to anyone outside the community. As a comment on a Maximilian video, I love that chat can be like, Max, if you whammy Brawly Shing Ding into Super Baby 2's Heavy 213 ABC, you can call Goku Black and he'll pick you up McDonald's. And every time Max is like, oh yeah, I can see it. Because that's what that is what this shit sounds like when you're talking to someone who doesn't know what fighting games are and doesn't speak the lingo. It does not make sense. Not a bad comment, not gonna lie. SK even chimed in, please, I can't take any more Numpad notation. Can we say down and backwards and forwards? It's easier to translate Mandarin Chinese in my head than Numpad notation. There's no freaking numbers on my controller, man. And this kind of, gets in the way of the common argument about how Numpad notation is superior for crossing language barriers. Yeah, I think so for transcribing and trying to dictate notation for combos and combo videos and trying to preserve things in a more formal documented fashion for sure. But there's still friction there. It's not intuitive by any means, and I think that it's a big overstatement for people to assume that it's intuitive for someone who does not play fighting games to understand Numpad notation. There's still a level of friction to translate it, absolutely. And there's even a big friction within the fighting game community itself, because like I said, Numpad notation primarily became more mainstream from anime games, and it got really mainstream, I would say, with the rise of popularity in Guilty Gear Strive. Guilty Gear Strive blew up during 2021 in the COVID era, and brought in a whole new generation of fighting game players who are looking to play our online rollback netcode game, and Guilty Gear Strive really fit the bill at the time. And so there's a whole new generation of fighting game players who were raised on Numpad notation. But for us old heads on the Capcom side, it was all about using normal Capcom notation, which was about doing shorthand for common verbal directions for the moves. So this is from the Street Fighter Alpha 2 wiki about notation, and this is the same across all Street Fighter, right? You say forward for forward, back for back, up for up, and down for down. And you might shorthand it with abbreviations, and the motions are described by the actual motion. So quarter circle forward, you say quarter circle forward. And then there is a level of still ambiguity, abstraction you have to go through, because it actually means to move your controller down and through that quarter circle motion, and QCF represents that. And Numpad notation, that would be 2, 3, 6. So I think for most people, if you zoom out, really all notations have this level of abstraction where you have to learn the language. To see 2, 3, 6 and understand it means this motion is a very similar mental pathway, in my view, to seeing QCF and understanding that it means rotation, this motion. And in my brain, I do the same translation. I don't see 2, 3, 6 and I see a shape. I see 2, 3, 6, and then I have to visualize a numpad, and then I have to trace the shape. I have to go through this mental step to get there. When I see QCF, I have to go through a mental step to translate. That means quarter circle forward, and that means that shape. So there's still a hop no matter what. There's still like this level of friction, this abstraction layer that you go through no matter what notation you use. I think for new players, it's going to be intimidating no matter what. And it's funny that this big debate has come up again around NL with 2xKO, because the last time I saw this numpad notation debate being this heated was from 2xKO describing their combo last year. They had a tweet here just to show off Alawi combos, and they did it in Capcom style notation because the devs for this game are all Marvel players. They live and breathe Capcom style notation. They're Capcom heads at the end of the day. This game has a lot of anime influence, but the devs themselves are from older Capcom games. And when they posted this combo, all the responses were the exact same. People were pissed at the fact that they wrote this combo this way. But I guarantee you, write the same combo with numbers instead, and a new fighting game player is still like, what the fuck am I reading? Save this for later. Yeah, this did somehow came back again. They were right about that. Replace all down with 2, up with, what is that? Fucking, I don't even know, 7. I have to do a translation in my head for this. It's going to be the same thing. They're not going to have any idea what is written here whatsoever. 4-9, see, I can't even, I don't care. I don't care what notation you put it in. I do agree that Numpad notation is definitely the objectively best format for preserving with the least amount of ambiguity for combo notation, for like really accurate documentation. But for casual conversation in passing, trying to talk about these moves, these sequences, there's no real perfect solution. I think Numpad, the dogmatic Numpad fanatics, I think they are really forgetting what it's like to be a new fighting game player. I really don't think they understand. Just because you got used to Numpad notation does not mean that there is not this ambiguity and this abstraction baked into it. And I talked about this at the time. Everyone's so cranky dogmatic about their chosen combo notation preference, and the prize is pretty funny. Numpad notation has obvious pros, but no matter what, when you write a combo, it's going to be gibberish to someone who isn't familiar, and kids don't know what a numpad is. I am so tired of everyone saying, look at your numpad. It does not exist. My keyboard literally does not have a numpad. When I think about the numpad, I have to... So it's not just this level of abstraction of I have to look at my numpad. I have to first physically imagine what a keyboard numpad is. When's the last time I've actually seen one of these? I have to physically imagine it. And then once I physically imagine it, I have to structure the keys in that grid format. And then I have to paint the numbers on the keyboard. And then I have to follow the numbers that were in the combo notation and then translate that to a shape. And then that will be what I'm supposed to input. That's the level of abstraction I go through as someone who grew up on Capcom notation for this. Now, if you grew up on Numpad notation, it's going to be second nature to you. Of course. But for casual conversation, I don't care what you do. It's your first language is your first language, and that's going to be what's intuitive to you to be able to quickly share information. That's just how it is. It's literally just like learning a language here. But I do, like I said, before the Numpad fanatics come after me, I do agree that usually Numpad is the best for transcribing combos. I understand all the pros, but I do think it's also overstated. One thing I think about is this, language barriers is a huge part of the advocation for Numpad. I definitely shorthand a lot of specials to quarter B, even when I'm talking in Numpad. So even, first of all, no one who does Numpad notation does the Numpad notation for SPD. Zangief's spinning pile driver or his super, 2 full 360 motions, a 720, no one writes out those directions. I dare you to count out Zangief's command grab every time you want to talk about Zangief doing something. Guess what you end up doing? You end up doing what the fucking boomers did 20 years ago. You figure out a way to abstract what you're trying to communicate, because this is how language evolves. I'm sorry, it's what happens. Now, Gold Lewis, that's a character where you have to get maybe specific because he has so many different variations of what he's doing. But no matter what, when people try to communicate and try to transcribe these ideas, eventually shorthands develop to make it more convenient to communicate the same ideas with less words and less effort. That's just how it is. That's how people talk. Now, maybe if you're writing a combo guide documentation that you want to preserve in a wiki to stand the test of time, maybe you'll take the time to write that out in Numpad notation. Even then, I would argue there's other aspects to that I like about being ambiguous with notation as well. It doesn't tell you how to do a move. The more abstract, the better. Like with SPD supers, you might use any number of input shortcuts to make it happen. If you write out uppercut to level 3 in Street Fighter 6, DP level 3, sure, you can tell me 623, what would you do? 6236, 236. 623P, 236P. You could say that. You could write that out as how to do DP into level 3. That's not what I'm doing. I dare you to write out how to do crouch DP into left-right SOCD level 3. Write that out in Numpad notation. Because even if you wrote out 2323P, what would it be? It would be 626P. If you wrote that out, you're not telling them what I'm doing. I'm fucking cheating and using SOCD, and I'm pressing left and down at the same time to get that. I'm pressing left, right, and down at the same time to get that 2 input at the end. I'm cheating. The input, when you write that out, you're making, if they read that verbatim, literally, if you're saying this is Numpad notation, I'm telling you verbatim exactly what I'm inputting right here. That is not true. There is ambiguity with how we actually input things. When you say SPD, I don't tell you how to input SPD. It could be that you're doing SPD by starting from left and swinging around to up right to jump cancel on an active frame there, or you could be going from right to swing around to up left. It depends on the context. Or you could be a psycho and you start from up and swing around. I don't know. It depends on what you're trying to do and why. There's a level of ambiguity baked into how we transcribe these moves, because you might choose a different method of input to pull that off. Don't get me started on grappler players on hitbox as well. What kind of jump cancel shenanigans are they doing? Some SOCD tricks they're pulling off to make those 360s happen, right? I don't know. How do you even transcribe? But the point being, no matter which notation you go with, there's going to be ambiguity baked in, and no matter what, kids don't fucking know what a numpad is. I'm sorry. To assume that this is something that is obvious and just universal is wrong. I have not had a keyboard with a numpad on it in years. The telephone numpad is inverted from the keyboard and calculator numpad. Which numpad are you talking about? This is not ubiquitous within culture. This is not the same thing. Which is why probably someone said, oh yeah, numpad 1 means up back. For sure. People swear up and down. Look at the numpad on your keyboard. So many keyboards do not have numpads anymore. I think this tweet really kind of summed it up well. The fact that this made people genuinely mad is your sign to step back and think critically when talking to a new player about fighting games. I think this is the main thing here. People were looking at this tweet and saying things like, this sort of attitude is why fighting games are dumbed down and why fighting games keep being mutilated to appeal to casuals who don't even care about the genre itself. I guarantee you the people picking up the OG fighting games in the arcades, in picking up Street Fighter 4 back in the day, they didn't fucking say 2H to anti-air. They use flowery language instead to describe crouching heavy punch. I'm just saying, humans did not communicate like this. People played complex fighting games that were difficult for years, and the way they spoke was with words. People not immediately picking up on the community accepted standardized notation has nothing to do with their inability to enjoy a game and then to potentially want to, when they're ready, grab onto more concepts like notation. When you're just trying to play a game, are you really ready to learn how to visualize a keyboard in your head and transcribe that to directions? That's too many layers of abstraction for someone to do on the fly when they can barely remember what buttons to press when they're playing. And this really reminded me of how I had to personally learn how to meet players where they are. When I was in the first slam coaching this little bird here, Doki Bird. I got assigned Doki Bird in the first Sage Jam Slam. If you wanted me to get Doki Bird to cook the competition in her tier, which she ended up doing, by the way, she was the MVP of tier 1 in Sage Jam Slam. You wanted me to tell her to do things like press medium punch, heavy punch, SPD. Hey, do a 360 real quick. Do a one. What would it be? 1, 2, 6, 9, 8, 7 real quick, Doki. She would have never fucking booted up the game. I had to meet her where she was at. Hey, Doki. Okay, here's the modern Geef guide to quickly cheese out the opponent. So I'm gonna cover some normals, jump-ins, and then specials, and then auto combos, and then the cheese strats. And we're gonna get through this extra quick and easy. So the main normals we're gonna focus on is square here. Down and square. Square. I had to say the shapes of the button. Just like how NL was saying, tell me to press X when I jump. I had to get to her level and I had to describe the actual inputs based on the shapes associated with her controller. That was the only way I could communicate to her what moves she should be pressing and when. Just like with NL, for Doki Bird, I had to do that. And that's what I transcribed. I wrote her a whole guide here. I translated everything. You know how difficult this was for me? For someone who plays on who has played with classic controls for 20 years at this point, 30 years, who fucking knows? I had to learn modern Zangief and transcribe everything I was saying to square, X, circle, triangle. Do you know how much I wanted to say SPD? Do you know how badly I want to say mash your light punch? But it wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have meant anything to her. You have to communicate for a new player, you have to communicate at their level. And when they're ready, you can start to generalize concepts and teach them other ways to do it. They don't have to learn everything all at once. New players are just trying to play the game and have fun. I probably asked what controller she was using beforehand. No, I would tell her to do a move and she would be like, what is light punch? And then I had to ask her, what buttons are you pressing? She said, I'm pressing square and X and triangle. And I said, okay, that's what we're going with. I had to translate all of this. Specials, triangle. I made an effort to say SPD here because if I told her in the heat of a moment, I would probably, SPD would slip out. You know what I mean? I had to like at least give a reference. Because I was like, I might accidentally say SPD out of nowhere. So I said triangle. So anyways, I think all fighting game notations suck for new players. And I think it's one of the last things that they need to learn. It's okay for people to not like Numpad notation. It's also okay for people to not like Capcom notation. There's no perfect solution here. Eventually, I think for your own integration into the community and to be able to participate and communicate effectively, these are things that you shouldn't be stubborn about. You should learn eventually. But for new players, like, come on, dude. People do not want to learn Numpad notation when they're playing a fighting game casually. I'm sorry. It's just how it is. And to be dogmatic about it and to assert that this is the only way to go about things and that you must communicate with Numpad notation is asinine to me. I will say quarter circle forward forever. If I need to write it down, if I need to preserve a specific input notation, if I need to cross language barriers, I will consider Numpad notation for those use cases. If I'm talking to you like a human, I'm probably going to use words in my language to describe what I mean. That's probably what's going to happen because it's just easier. And I think more people would understand what I'm saying than less. And anyways, that's all I got. I'm sure there's going to be lots of happy comments in the YouTube video about this one, about my take on Numpad notation, even though, once again, I think it's great. Just don't assume everyone wants to learn. That's all. Peace.